Excellent. Okay, so welcome everyone to the Home Energy Retrofit Orientation Webinar, or HERO. My name is Emily Cormier. I am the Sustainability Coordinator at the City of Sault Ste. Marie. And I'm joined this evening by Christy Sayers and Tia Jones from Garden River First Nation, who are co-hosting this event in partnership with the city, as well as our presenter this evening, Marcus Heinz, who will be doing the presentation on the HERO webinar. So thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge with respect, though we are gathered virtually, that today we are in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory, and the land on which I am speaking to you from is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, home of Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the Métis Nation of Ontario. I also acknowledge that this area is historically known as Bowani. The city recognizes the importance of our relationship with the Indigenous community and as we move forward in the spirit of reconciliation. Now, I believe that we can begin in a good way. So I'll be starting the presentation off tonight with a bit of an overview of some of the work that the City of Sault Ste. Marie is doing. And this will be followed by a presentation by both Christy and Tia from Garden River. And then we will dive right into the main event of this evening, which is a presentation by Marcus. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Hopefully I'll be able to do so. And I'll just ask that one of the panelists can give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Thank you, Christy and Tia and Marcus. We're good to go. Alrighty, so view, having a moment here. There we go. Okay, so as I said, welcome to our Home Energy Retrofit Orientation webinar. This is presented by Humber College in Enbridge and is brought to you today by the City of Sault Ste. Marie and Garden River First Nation. Just a brief overview of the agenda tonight. Christy and I will be doing a bit of an overview of our work that we're working on, myself, the city's greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan, and Christy, the Garden River Indigenous Community Energy Plan. And the majority of the evening will be the HERO presentation by Marcus Heinz, CEO of the Interscope Energy Research and Mapping. And we will close with some closing remarks. Because this is a webinar, I will ask that you please put all of your questions into the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom window there, and there will be breaks in between different sections for questions. So as I mentioned, I wanted to speak a little bit of some of the work that the City of Sault Ste. Marie is doing on. They completed the community's very first greenhouse gas reduction plan. Oops, my slides are skipping on me. This was completed back in December of 2020. So I'll just provide you with a quick overview of that. This plan was unanimously approved by City Council in 2020, and it's based on a variety of actions in the sectors of emissions, buildings and energy, corporate and community. It looks at reduction actions from transportation and waste, but it also looks at emissions opportunities from the green space, economic development, and municipal leadership sector. The city's goal for GHG reduction is net zero by 2050, and the city will take a staged approach to achieve this goal with focusing on a reduction target of 10% corporate and 5% community emissions between 2020 and 2030, with an increasing scale of reduction target between 2030 and 2050. A huge component of this plan relates to energy efficiency, which speaks very well to the presentation this evening. But in addition to the actions identified in the plan also addresses a series of guiding principles. It speaks to issues such as affordability. Again, I apologize, my slides are jumping on me. So when you look at reducing your energy costs, you create more economical housing. It also looks at creating accountability to ensure that we have a sustainable future for the next generations. Education and awareness is a big pillar of the plan, which is what is so important about today. It also speaks to community pride. So by diversifying our sustainability options, we improve our community well-being. And of course, looking at clean tech and ecotourism as forms of economic development, and protecting our environment and habitat and species at risk from climate impacts. Looking at health, so by reducing emissions, you can address things like asthma and Lyme disease, as well as food security. So by growing food closer to home, you can reduce emissions from having to transport food here. The plan is robust and it has a series of priorities. This is just a high-level overview of some of the actions that have taken place so far. We have established an environmental sustainability committee that meets monthly and acts as the overseeing body of the plan. We've created a climate information webpage on the city's website, and we're looking at budgeting and funding options for the year one priorities, as well as undertaking a youth initiative within the community that addresses environment and really prioritizing municipal leadership and policy changes, such as developing a climate lens policy. On the emissions reduction front, we're prioritizing energy efficiency retrofits, as well as zero emission fleet opportunities. We've summarized priorities by city department, and we're looking at increasing tree planting to help offset emissions, as well as developing a community retrofit program and streamlining our energy data tracking. Just a couple of highlights of things that we're working on. The city does plan to go half electric for city buses by 2026. And next year we will be purchasing our very first electric bus and charger, as well as completing the infrastructure work. From a central administration standpoint, we are looking at installing solar panels at our bus depot for 2023, as well as some retrofits at community centers, looking at lighting, heat recovery units, and energy efficiency equipment. From a waste standpoint, we've made changes to purchasing packages to reduce single-use packaging material, and our biosolids management facility will be expanding its scope to accept municipal source separated organics as required by the province. We also have a plastic-free pledge, which we promote for participation within the community of Sault Ste. Marie. And we've recently gone to RFP to develop an active transportation master plan. And our economic development team is working at attracting renewable companies to the Soo. So I know that was a lot of information jam-packed into a very short amount of time. If you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to visit the City of Sault Ste. Marie's GHG Reduction Plan tab. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen here, and I will turn it over to Christy and Tia to provide you with an overview of some of the work that Garden River First Nation is doing as it pertains to their Indigenous Community Energy Plan. Christy?
Thank you for having us. The Indigenous Community Energy Plan was an energy strategic plan for Garden River with the support from the IESO, which is the Independent Electrical System Operator. The purpose of the ICEP, which is what we call it, is to implement our current and future energy priorities to promote educational development and awareness programs that we have. A lot of the programs and things that we have dealt with in the past was just kind of the ones that were mainly, I'm going to focus on the residential aspects of it. A lot of the ones that we dealt with were like the Ontario Electricity Support Programs, which is the OESP, the energy assistant programs, the home weatherization program, just to name a few. Those are ones that we had helped with members of our community to help get our, to get the residential homes more up to speed on electricity. We want to further educate our community with the true cost of energy, including the impacts on the environment and the economy. Garden River is in the process of starting an energy committee. We would be seeking community members to join along with our chief and council. Hopefully a couple councillors can join and probably be meeting about once a month regarding what more can we do to our community to help better our situations. I'm going to pass it off to Tia. She's going to talk about the waste management that has started this within the last year.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Tia Jones. I'm the program support coordinator and assistant energy in ERCD in Garden River. So recently our community has opened a waste transfer station. The transfer station opened on August 17th of this year, and it is open Tuesday through Saturday, with the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The Garden River Transfer Station is a resource recovery center used as a processing site for the temporary disposition, consolidation, and aggregation of waste. By diverting waste, there is a delay in the need for new landfills. Conserving landfill space also allows it to be used longer for waste that cannot be diverted. Waste segregation will continue to play an important role with general waste in Garden River, following the proper waste stream monitoring the diversion rate. This area will be designed as a temporary transfer station, which will include the following disposal bins: a share shed for tires, household waste, electronics, scrap metals, batteries, light bulbs, mattresses, and appliances. Also, in order to ensure a smooth transition and to comply with safety laws and regulations, Garden River has put in place an attendant at the gate of the transfer station to direct and advise the community on proper areas of disposal.
Thank you, Tia, and thank you, Christy, for the update. So a lot of exciting projects happening at both the city as well as Garden River First Nation. So I'm very thrilled now to present our guest of the evening, Marcus Heinz, CEO of Interscope Energy Research and Mapping, and he will be presenting the Home Energy Retrofit Orientation webinar. Again, a reminder to please put any questions that you have in the Q&A function at the bottom, closer to the left corner of your Zoom screen. And please enjoy the webinar. We're very excited about this. Marcus, over to you.
Thank you very kindly, Emily. Thanks for that great introduction. I'd like to wish everyone a good evening this evening. And I just wanted to say that we're here to talk about the retrofits that are possible that you can do on your home to make it a bit more energy efficient. Now, what I'm going to do, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see here if I can do that. All right, let's see if I have the functionality to do that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Emily, are you able to enable that?
Yeah, I think I have to make you a co-host here.
I see. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
There
so try again.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. And now I am going to get that started. And here we go. All right. So thanks for that, Emily.
No
like
problem.
I said, I'd like to welcome everyone to the hero session for Sault Ste. Marie and Garden River First Nation this evening. I'd like to thank you for joining me. So there's a number of things that we're going to go through this evening, but I just want to start off with some quick housekeeping. And that's really just, as Emily said, to put all your questions in the Q&A box. We'll definitely get through those questions as we go through the seminar this evening. There are 4 sections, and in each section, there is a place to ask questions. So we'll definitely get through the burning questions that you may have about this type of work that is becoming more and more popular. Now, like I said, of course, this is Sault Ste. Marie and Garden River First Nation. That's myself there. And I just wanted, like I said, take you through 4 sections this evening. So the first section is analyzing your home. And in that section, I'm really going to talk about why home analysis, why the NR guide analysis is really important. And you'll hear me refer to that NR guide analysis from time to time, and I'm going to tell you why it's important. I'm going to tell you how you can get one of those done for your home as well. Now, the second module that we'll do this evening is really all about the outer shell of your home, something called the envelope. And I'll tell you what that envelope really means, but I'll also tell you about your basement, your attic, your walls, and different things that you can do with your home to make it more energy efficient and to save you some money and some energy as well. Now, the third section is all about your mechanicals, and your mechanicals mean anything that has a moving part. So things like your furnaces, things like your pumps, things like your air conditioner, anything of that nature. How can you make those more efficient? And on top of that, what products can you buy along with that as well? And that is the third section. Like I said, between each section, there's a place to ask questions. So you may be able to get those questions that you want answered as well. Now, the final section is pretty simple. And that is just all about how you manage a renovation, and managing a renovation in terms of an energy efficient renovation. If you're thinking of doing any of this type of work to your home, if you're looking for any more information, if you're looking for any rebates, incentive programs, anything of that nature, how do you get onto those? And I share some sources of information with you as well. And that's essentially our product today in a nutshell. So like I said, my main goal here is really threefold. The first thing I want to do is I want to see if I can motivate you to do some action, to take some action on your home, and that's against the climate. And I'll tell you why that's important in a couple of slides as well. Secondly, I want to give you some information. I want to educate you on where you can find more resources that can help you to decide what it is you want to do with your home and exactly how you're going to do that. And then my third thing is really just to introduce you to the resources, like I said out there, that can help you with the cost part of all of this type work. I mean, any renovation is expensive, is costly, is time consuming. And I want to leave you with some resources that can help you to abate that and to get around that. So those are my 3 goals today. I'll revisit these at the end. And this is the entire point of my presentation today. Now I have some outcomes that I want to ensure that I hit. And those outcomes are really just to go over best practices, but most importantly, to recognize the benefits of doing any energy efficiency upgrades on your home or any space that you live in. And then most of all, I want to share with you the most high performance measures. Of course, there's several things that you can do to your home in any given go, but I want to share with you the most efficient, the things that cost you the least, but bring you the biggest savings, right? And on top of that, I also want to give you some jargon that you may hear, the techies and the contractors, you may hear them referring to different things, and you may be wondering to yourself, what is that? I don't know what that is. So I want to share with you some terms of jargon that you may come across as well. So those are my outcomes for today. Now, why all of this is important and where all of this really comes from is that the government of Canada, of course, has been monitoring the emissions of Canada, the pan-Canadian framework, as I call it, which just means all of Canada. And they have been measuring those emissions. And one thing that they realized is that the targets that they had set for 2050 are unachievable at the moment. If we continue on the path that we're on at the moment, we will be way above the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions that we are targeting for 2050. And because of that, you might have heard of some programs that really target this directly. An example of that is roughly about $7 billion that was set aside earlier this year to deal with energy efficient retrofits and upgrades all over the pan-Canadian framework. So of course, in the next few years, you're going to hear a lot of money sloshing around towards these energy efficient upgrades. And then on top of that, you're going to see all the cities and all the municipalities, they're going to be releasing their plans as well as it trickles all the way down. And an example of that were the 2 plans that were just mentioned just before. Now I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that is some of the stuff that you'll see. Now from here to 2050, we're essentially at 2022 now. If you look at this, this graph here on the right, from 2022 to 2050, there's several opportunities to change different components in your home. Things like your siding, your roofing, your windows, your refrigerators, your air conditioning. And on top of that, like I said, there's going to be some rebate programs and incentive programs out there to help you with that as well. So this is a pretty exciting time. This is something to look forward to as well. Like I said, the main outcome there is that the government of Canada is trying to ensure that we can meet those targets for 2050. Now, an example of those 2 plans that I heard, that I said that will trickle down from the government all the way down to the lowest levels in municipalities. 2 perfect examples here. On the left, you have the Garden River First Nation Indigenous Community Energy Plan. And on the right, you have the Sault Ste. Marie Community Greenhouse Gas Energy Plan as well. And those are 2 examples of the different plans, the different strategies of how different parts of Canada will try to tackle this problem. And that's because it's a problem throughout the entire pan-Canadian framework. We as a country will not meet our greenhouse gas targets by 2050, and we have to do something about it. And that is the whole purpose of this webinar this evening. Now, the first section, like I said, is really just about analyzing your home. This is where you, the homeowner, you can work with an advisor from NRCan, and that advisor will give you some information about your particular scenario. So this is tailored directly to you. And where this comes from is the fact that you have a home, you have lights, you have appliances, you have heaters, you have pumps, you have all sorts of different equipment in your home. And each piece of equipment consumes electricity. Some of those pieces of equipment consume natural gas as well. Now, when I say electricity, I mean electricity. But when I say energy, I mean a mixture of electricity and natural gas. And an example of that would be your furnace. Let's say that your furnace consumes maybe heavy oil, or maybe it consumes pellets, maybe it consumes wood. That is a measure of energy, because there will be some electricity being used to circulate the air around your home, but the heating source will also be a completely different energy source. And that's what I mean when I say energy. Now, coming back to this diagram here that you see in the middle of your screen, you have different pieces of equipment in your home. And like I said, each of those really uses a certain amount of electricity and energy. And what that is really measured in is a unit called a gigajoule. Gigajoule, that's the one. And a gigajoule can mean anything. A gigajoule can mean a certain amount of electricity, or it could mean 27 cubic meters of natural gas, or it could mean 72 kilograms of wood. Regardless of what it means, your home will consume that, regardless of the way that it consumes that. And that gigajoule rating can be attached to your home, because that's on average what you will consume for the entire year. Now, the only problem with this gigajoule rating for your home is that you have to take electricity from the grid, and you also have to take natural gas from the gas grid as well, or even if you have a tank or whatever source you use. And of course, there's a cost attached to that, right? In this particular case, what happens with your home is all of the energy combined that you use will be given to your home as a rating. And that's what the EnerGuide assessment really tries to figure out. Now, if you look here on the right side of my screen, you'll realize that I have a little tag here that says EnerGuide. And this is the result of an EnerGuide energy audit. So you reach out to NR Canada and use Natural Resources Canada, and you would say, hey, I need an EnerGuide assessment done. You pay the fees, and I'll get into the fees a little bit later, and they send an advisor to your home. You work with that advisor to determine what is your gigajoule rating for the entire year. Now, if you look here on the right side, you'll realize that this particular house that we're looking at in this example here on the right scored 90 gigajoules per year. So that means in total, they use 90 gigajoules per year. Actually, they use 74 gigajoules per year. But the average home in this given area uses 90 gigajoules per year. So that means that this home is a little bit more efficient than the average home in this area, because it uses less energy, it uses less gigajoules. Now, another thing that comes out of that EnerGuide assessment, it'll tell you where your energy is going. So it'll tell you how much you use on space heating, how much you use on water heating, how much you use on ventilation and air conditioning. It'll tell you an itemized list of where you consume the most energy. And then on top of that, you can use that to target the most energy intense areas. And this is what's called a housing information sheet. Now, one thing that I want to preface here, and you will hear me repeat this throughout my entire seminar today, if you're going for any rebates or incentives, and a rebate just really means that you would have done this type of work to your home, and you're applying to a utility, or you're applying to the IESO or any of those other entities after the fact that that work has been done, and you're applying for a sum of money to be paid to you, that is a rebate. If you're applying before this work has been done to encourage you to do this work, that is an incentive. Now, regardless of if you're applying for rebates or incentives, you absolutely have to do 2 energy audits to do that. And why that is because your first energy audit will tell you what level of consumption, how many gigajoules per year you consume at the moment. Then you do all of your work, your retrofit work and what's not. And then after that, the second audit will tell you where you are now. So it's essentially giving you a full picture of where you were before compared to where you are now. And that's the only way that you can tap into these incentives and rebate programs. Now, like I said, that $7 billion is going to come in the form of incentives and rebates all over the province and all over the country. And believe me, I'm sure you want to apply for some of those, because it's essentially free money that's being given away. And that's because, again, the government wants to ensure that those greenhouse gas targets can be met by 2050. So that's particularly important. This is your EnerGuide rating here. That's the very first thing to start with. Now, I do have a little bit of a question here, and I just want to ask that question in a few slides. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what happens when you order the EnerGuide rating or the EnerGuide assessment. And what really happens is the fact that as the advisor comes to your home, they will attach some equipment to your home. Like I said, this is tailored to you. You will tell the advisor when you want this done, how do you want it done, things like that, and they will work with you on this. Now, the first thing that they will do is what you'll see here on my screen. It's called a blower door test. And that blower door test really is putting a large door and a large fan in your front door. They just really open your door as wide as you can go and install the equipment. And they pull all the air out of your home. Of course, your papers and what's not, they have to be stapled down, or you have to put a paperweight on it, stuff like that. But it's relatively seamless, it's relatively easy. And what the purpose of that is to figure out where your home is leaking. So how they do that, like I said, they take the air out of your home and they take some photos of your home as the air is flowing. Now, those photos really show you here on the right what is happening with the home. So the hot areas are the yellow areas. The cold areas are the blue areas. In this particular case, you can see here that we have a large collection of warm air right in the roof, which makes sense because hot air rises, right? So that makes sense. In this particular case, the only thing that is telling me is that the air is not circulating around the home as it should. Now, another thing that this EnerGuide assessment really tells you, it gives you an ACH. ACH just really means air changes per hour. You have to look out for that from your EnerGuide advisor. And the air changes per hour just really means in an hour, how many times will the air inside of your home filter out of it? And that's based on the amount of leaks in your windows that you have, leaks in your doors that you have, how well your home is sealed. Now, if there's a high number, like let's say 10 air changes per hour, it means that your home is not very well sealed. However, if that number is closer to 0, it means that your home is very well sealed, right? Less air leakage. And the result of that air leakage is that you may be sitting somewhere in your home and you're feeling a draft on your neck, you're feeling really cold, or you're feeling it in your shoes. You can't step on the floor because it's just so cold. And it's really things like that, these ways that manifests. So the door test really allows persons to understand what is happening with your home. It really helps you to understand the general picture. And like I said, out of that blower door test, you will get an EnerGuide rating. And that EnerGuide rating will really tell you how much of your energy is going to space heating, space cooling, air circulation, different parts of your home. Now, in this particular example that I have here, this example is the general average for Ontario, and this is from Ottawa, Ontario. And you can see that this house here was built in roughly about 1981. So a bit of an older house by comparison to some others. And it's a detached home, it's 2-story, and it's a single family house. And you can see here that it has quite a high consumption rate, roughly about 72 gigajoules per year. And the target for this area is 90 gigajoules per year. So it's a little bit better by comparison. But the condition with this home here is that it has poor building envelope, very high air change levels, older mechanicals, because remember it was built in 1981. So those mechanicals would probably be from 1980 or so. And then on top of that, it uses various heating fuels based on what's available. Now, one thing that I want to show you here is the consumption of Ontario, and that is 101 gigajoules by average. And that is the highest, 5th highest in Canada. So of course, if we're able to work with all the homes across Ontario, or as many as possible, we'll be able to get that average down, and we'll be able to beat some of the other provinces and do a bit better on that. The highest energy consumption across Canada is not a title that you want. So we want some bragging rights on that. So of course, this type of work will be important for that. Now, I just have a bit of a question here, and I'm not sure if we can use a poll for this one, or we can do it just by manually. But
no poll, Marcus.
No poll? Okay.
No poll. We're
going. Okay.
Either raise your hand, we'll ask the panelists to maybe raise their hands, or if I think they can access the chat, and if not, to put any thoughts in the Q&A function.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. So my question to you is, what is the biggest barrier to improving your home's energy performance. What is the biggest hindrance? What is stopping you from improving your home's energy performance? Now, let's say by show of hands, if the thing stopping you or the reason stopping you is the fact that you just recently moved into this particular home.
We'll ask the
show of hands.
Yeah, there we go. There's a little icon
okay, we have some.
at the bottom of your screens.
Perfect. All right. We have some feedback on that one. Let's see now the second reason. The biggest barrier to your home is contractor access. You can't find the contractor, you call them, you can't hear from them, they come, they give you a quotation, they don't come back, things like that. I saw some hands go up there. Okay, so that is also a problem. Let's see now, the third reason, cost. It's just very expensive to do, very time consuming, very costly to your bank account. Is that the reason that you haven't? Okay, we see two parts, right? That seems to be the most popular one so far. Convenience. Well, three parts of this as well. Convenience. It's just really too time consuming. The schedule doesn't fit. You have to go to work. You have to go to this place and whatnot. There's just absolutely no time to do it. Okay. And then the final reason, lack of information. You just don't know what this is about, and you're not really sure on how to approach it. Is that the reason that you haven't been improving your home's energy performance? Okay. So across the board, and thank you for those responses there. Across the board, you have a number of reasons why persons have not really tried to tackle this type of work with their home. And of course, I'm going to try to assess and assist with some of these issues here. And the first one I want to assess with is lack of information, because I want to leave some information with you as well. But I also want to help you with the costs, and I want to tell you about some rebates and incentive programs that may be applicable to you in your area as well. Right? So there are a number of these that I want to try to tackle. All right. Now, going back to the value of that EnerGuide assessment, it does a number of other things as well. It gives you an entire report. You work with your advisor, and that advisor identifies the different parts of your home that are leaking. And this may be something that you already know as well, because you can feel the drafts on your neck, you can feel the drafts on your ankles, you can feel the drafts on your skin. Another thing it does with that as well is to suggest, the advisor that does this suggests the best type of insulation to use. And that insulation is based on your microclimate, the area that you live, whether it's a rainy area, whether it's a dry area, whether it's particularly cold, things like that, and how it suits your home as well. On top of that, you'll have some suggestions about window upgrades, mechanical upgrades, and then any other savings that you can do with your home here in this particular case. Right, so you can see this is what the assessment looks like here on the right. And that will be, like I said, tailored to your individual home. And that is some of the value that comes out of this assessment. Now, another piece of value that comes out of the assessment is the fact that it tells you the best parts of air sealing to do for your home. Now, one thing that I want to say here is that air sealing is sometimes, in many cases, on average, responsible for about 20% of a home's energy loss. So that nice warm air that's coming from your furnace, all the money that you spent on doing that, 20% of that, 1 in 5, is going right out through the window. And if you can keep that in a bit more, keep that in a bit better, well, then you can essentially save energy and save money in the process as well. And these are some of the benefits here on the left of air sealing. Now, air sealing can essentially be do it yourself. But before that, I want to ask you a question. Do you think your home is well insulated? Let's say by a show of hands, who thinks that their home is very well insulated? By a show of hands. Okay, so we have 2%. Okay. Do you think your home is well insulated? Perfect. Okay. All right. And let's see the persons that do not think that their home is well insulated. You do not think that your home is well insulated at all.
Marcus, just to add, we have a comment in the chat about we need an option for no clue because perhaps some folks don't know
I see. Okay. Well, well insulated or poorly insulated would probably mean poorly insulated rather would probably mean that your home is very drafty. You set the temperature to a higher level and it's still not picking up that heat. You just really have to set it to a very high level to really maintain that heat or to retain that heat. Now, on top of that, you spend a lot of money in doing that. It's very costly to do that. That is poorly insulated. Every time the wind blows, you can feel it coming through the windows, or you can see your windows condensing and fogging up and what's not, things like that, poorly insulated. So let's see, who thinks that their home is not well insulated? Have you run into any of those problems before? Okay, and let's say on a particularly windy day, then that's when you feel the draft. So depending on weather, let's see who thinks that about your home. I think that weather plays a significant role in how well it's insulated. Okay. Well, there'll be some more questions along the way, and some of them may be more significant to you. We'll go ahead. All right, so one of the most valuable improvements that you can do with your home, and this is value for money here, this is where you're actually being able to understand what to do with your home to make it a bit more energy efficient, is to seal those air leaks. Now, if you look here in the bottom middle, around this window here, this white window with the black shutters that you'll see, around that window frame is usually where you get a lot of leakage, depending on the type of construction that you have in your home there. In many cases, that's usually left uninsulated. Because of that, the air goes right underneath the window and out through the window down the street. And that's not where you want your warm air to be going, because that is warm air that you paid for. That's warm air that your furnace created, right? So essentially in that particular case, you want your nice warm air to stay inside a lot more. Now, another thing that you can do to improve your home's air sealing performance is to seal around the frame of the door. And around the frame of the door is another area where a lot of air escapes as well. Now, if you look at this diagram that I have here on the right, you'll realize that this is a home. It has a basement and it's surrounded by some snow. And what's happening with that snow is it's releasing some moisture, it's releasing some temperature as well. It's releasing energy. And that energy is going directly through the bottom of the window and it's coming in under the window and then it's sinking down, because remember, cold air sinks, hot air rises, right? And then on top of that, you'll realize that the nice warm air coming from the furnace is being circulated around the home, but that warm air is really just staying up to roof level. And on top of that, it's also escaping through the various parts of the attic as well. So it means in this particular case, the home is not doing a very good job of heating at all, and that is costing the homeowner quite a bit of money. So if you're able to tighten up on that air sealing a bit, that will actually increase your home efficiency. Now, the benefits of doing that, it'll help you to reduce the money that you spend on heating. And on top of that, it's a bit more healthy. You'll feel more comfortable in your home. You'll feel better in your home about it. And then on top of that, you reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. You save energy in doing that, and energy is directly linked to greenhouse gases. You're better able to manage your home in terms of the temperature, the settings that you choose, and what's not. And there are other benefits to that as well. Now, one thing I want to preface here, like I said, is that there are some incentives out there. And an incentive means that you're paid to do this work upfront, and then you provide the evidence that the work has been done. A rebate is where you do the work, and then you apply for the rebate after, and they say, okay, well done, here's your sum of money. That's the difference between the two. And for air sealing, there are quite a few incentive programs out there. Now, one example is the Greener Homes program. That's a federal program. And through the Greener Homes program, they have a number of different incentives. You just have to go onto their website, you have to look for that information, and you have to apply for that based on your scenario. Now, like I said, for any incentive or rebates that you're applying to, you have to provide proof of two audits, a first audit and a second audit. The first audit will tell you what you consume at the moment. The second audit will tell you what you consume after the energy efficient upgrades have been done to your home. And it really just compares the two. Now, I'll get into the cost of audits in the next section, but it's essentially roughly about $600 for the two of them. Now, on top of that, there are some rebate programs that will refund you up to about $550 of that. So you're essentially getting two audits for $50 if you apply for these incentive and rebate programs. So you have to definitely look for that information, find some more information on that, apply, send in your application, and that is something that can help you with the cost of that as well. That was something that we determined earlier was a barrier to doing this type of work. So we want to remove that barrier a bit. Now, there's some other organizations that collect information on this. They do research on this. This is what they do. This is how they operate. And one of those is the Better Homes website. The Better Homes website is being tailored for several different municipalities all over the province. The most popular one, the best up and running one, or the one that has the most information to date, is the one for Toronto, Better Homes Toronto. There's also one for Burlington as well, Better Homes Burlington, and then there's some others all around the province as well. But Better Homes, like I said, is one source of information that can give you more information about different things happening here in terms of your air sealing and in terms of your incentives and your rebates. Now, there's also some climate funds. You'll see different atmospheric funds. I know there is several nonprofits that do this type of work as well. One that comes to mind is the Toronto Atmospheric Fund as well. They have various sources of information about incentives and rebates as well. Now, one thing I don't want you to worry about as a homeowner is I don't want you to worry about trying to take these notes simply because you'll get some handouts with all of this information on it as well. So even if this is something that you're interested in doing with your home, you'll get a handout that will help you to find where all of the information should be, right? And that will be sent after the session. All right, so that brings us to the end of the first section. And we can take a very quick break here, less than a minute and a half or so for any questions that might have come in. Emily, do we have any questions?
Just checking the Q&A section here. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to punch them in. We don't have any right now, or use
perfect.
The chat function. I will just add, if I may, just very quickly to what you were speaking to there. Some of these programs, the atmospheric fund, et cetera, or those programs that you mentioned are very specific to Toronto and the southern Ontario area. So what we've done here at the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and I'm going to just pop this link into the chat function, is we have a site on the city's website where we list all of the programs that are available within the province as well as federally. You can do a deeper dive on your own time into the Canada Greener Homes Grant that Marcus was speaking to, as well as some of the other programs, those offered by Enbridge. This webinar this evening is based specifically on the residential sector, but of course there's also incentives for the commercial sector out there. So if anyone on this webinar or viewing at home after the fact is a business owner, I encourage you to check those out as well. And something that the city is working on is hopefully down the road looking at developing a community retrofit program for Sault Ste. Marie and surrounding communities as well. But that's still a work in progress. But please check out the city's website for more details. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. So again, last call, if you have any, please put them in. We can always answer them closer to the end of this evening's webinar.
Perfect. All right, thank you for that, Emily. And now we move on to the second section. And that's the section all about your envelope. So like I said before, I would have mentioned what your envelope is, but now I want to take a deeper dive into that and tell you a bit more about that. Now, your envelope, your building envelope, your home envelope is made up of a number of different components of your home. Things like your roof, your ceiling, your windows, your doors, different parts of the actual structure that keep your home upright, the basement floors, the overhanging floors, all of those are referred to as the envelope. And this is because the envelope really is responsible for keeping the outdoors, and it's responsible for keeping the indoors. And what I mean by that is the cold air in winter is responsible for keeping that outside and is responsible for keeping the warm air inside during winter as well. So the envelope is particularly important to helping you to manage your efficiency as well. Now for this section, what I will do is I will start with some jargon. Then I will go into some work that the NRCan did, and then I will relate that to each particular home, each individual home. Then I'll go to the benefits of that, and I'll talk about some rebate programs that may be available for that as well. Right. So that is the format for the section, and we're going to start it off now with some jargon. So, like I said, the building envelope really just has three functions. It provides support to your home, it regulates the internal climate, and then on top of that, your envelope is what you put things like your siding and your finishing on. That's really what gives your home the look and the feel that it really is. So it's the actual fabric of your home. Now, I would have mentioned air changes per hour earlier, and that's really just all about air sealing. How well is the air staying in your home, right? And that's particularly important. Final piece of jargon that you'll hear, R value. And then R value just really means resistance. So going back to that same envelope in your home, how well can it resist that warm air that's on the inside getting outside? How well can it keep it inside? That's really what your R value is about, how well your insulation is doing its job. And that's particularly important because that will also directly affect your efficiency. So you can see here, like I said, on the left, is keeping the nice warm air that's coming from your furnace. It could be electrical heating, it could be wood pellets, it could be anything. It's keeping that inside your home, and it's stopping the cold air from getting in as well. And that cold air is really reducing the temperature and robbing you of all of the nice warm air that you just put into your home, and you don't want that because that will cost you money and energy. So the insulation is twofold here. It divides the different parts of your home, different rooms and what's not, but it also stops heat from coming outside during the winter and vice versa in summer. And that's particularly important, like I said, for the efficiency of your home. Now, the NRCan had a test case. They bought a random house, and they bought this house in roughly in the center of Ontario, roughly not necessarily northern Ontario, roughly in the center of Ontario. And in this particular case, what they did was they tested all the systems, and they came up with a gigajoule rating for this home. So you can see here that gigajoule rating is roughly 147 gigajoules per year. So quite intense on the energy scale here in this particular case. That's pretty up there. That uses a lot of energy, right? Now on the right here, you're looking at this graph, but what this graph really shows you is the different parts of that home that use 147 gigajoules per year, the different parts that they were able to retrofit and how much they were able to save on each of those retrofits in terms of gigajoules. So you can see the biggest bang for buck here, things like your walls, changing the insulation in those walls, your windows, improving how well those windows perform, improving the attic and the ceiling, and then on top of that, air leakage, air sealing, making sure that the home is more airtight as well. And those are some of the main things that they would have done to this home. And the result of that was that they got that 147 gigajoules per year down to 113 gigajoules per year. So quite a bit of energy savings on this particular example, this particular scenario. Now, one thing that they did with this home after they got to 130 gigajoules per year is they did another retrofit. They did a deeper dive on that retrofit. And it's now made two completely different examples. One is the base case where they got to 113 gigajoules. And the other one is the deep retrofit where they got down to 90 gigajoules per year. So it means that for deep retrofits, you're going even past the boundaries. You're surpassing the boundaries. You're doing even more in-depth work in this particular case. Now, I have a bit of a question here, and this question will help me to understand a bit more about what's going on with homes and what's not. Have you ever done an energy audit in your home? And an energy audit in this particular case means that you reached out to NR Canada and you said, Natural Resources Canada, and you said, hey, I need an energy audit done, and this is for doing any type of energy work. So let's see by show of hands, who's ever done that? See? All right, and then the opposite of that, who has never done that? Okay, we have quite a few participants raising their hand. Okay. And then is there any person that thinks that it wouldn't make sense for them? I have some feedback on that one as well. So I wanted to go through the audits a bit more. So like I said, they had two examples coming out of that home. The first one is where they did just some basic updates and upgrades in terms of energy efficiency. And the second one is where they took it even further and they did the best possible job that they could possibly do. The first one was baseline retrofits. The second one was deep retrofits. For the baseline retrofits, they went with pretty standard basic equipment. And they got down to 3 air changes per hour. However, with the deep retrofits, where they did the best possible job they could possibly do, and on top of that, they used the best materials that they can find on the market, they got down to 1.5. Actually, they got under 1.5 air changes per hour. So in this particular case, the home was very well insulated and it was performing very well in terms of air sealing. And how they did that was by looking at different parts of the home and choosing the best insulation for different parts. So you can see here on the right, I have different types of insulation, and each part of the home will require a different type of insulation, and each different home will require different insulation as well. But I just wanted to share some of the examples with you that could be eligible for you. Now, insulation can be a do-it-yourself job if this is something that you're interested in doing. But there are also some things to think about, things like the location of your electrical plugs and your wiring and what's not, things like fire safety, noise, rodents, moisture. There's several different things that you need to think about when you're doing insulation type work. So if it's something that's available to you, it may be better to get a contractor to help you with this. Regardless of that though, what your insulation for your home really does is it stops the outside air from getting in, and it stops the indoor air from escaping. On top of that, it balances the moisture in your home as well, because as we would have seen with that example before, there was some moisture coming from the snow, and that moisture was getting into the home and really taking away a lot of the energy. And that's one thing that you have to be mindful of as well. So some of the examples of insulation that you have here available to you: spray foam. Spray foam is a special application of foam that you have to, of course, take apart the entire envelope to be able to apply. But once it expands and it fits into place, it really increases your R value. Remember, your R value is your resistance values. So it keeps your air nice and sealed, nice and well sealed. It keeps the nice warm air inside, and it keeps the cold air outside, and that's what you want. Another one here on the right is fiberglass as well, a bit of a different application, but kind of the same concept. And you might see that pink stuffed insulation in, that's essentially fiberglass insulation in that case. And what that helps to do, that increases your R value as well. Different types of home use different insulation, so it just really depends on your particular scenario. You may also be able to use batt insulation, which comes as a big drum, as a big roll, and then you have to roll it out and then install it that way. That also helps to increase your R value. And then there's cellulose insulation here that you can see this gentleman blowing onto the wall here. Now, cellulose is a natural plant fiber. It's essentially made from glucose, I believe. And what it does is little bits, you blow it in with this hose here, and that really increases the R value, but it's better for in terms of breathing, it's better for in terms of installing different things in the wall, things like that. It's essentially better in that particular sense. So if you're looking for an option that's a bit more green or a bit more environmentally friendly, cellulose is one of the options available to you. Now, for persons that live in an older home, especially if that home is a brick home, there are some products on the market and they come under cementitious or poor insulation. This is where you really just install this insulation via hose. It goes into the wall. It doesn't necessarily expand or anything of the sort, and that helps to increase your R value as well. And there's some companies around Ontario that are doing that simply because the older homes sometimes, in many cases, are the ones that are least energy efficient. They consume the most in terms of heating and cooling. So if the person that is owning that house or living there, they would want to improve their energy efficiency, that may be an option available to them as well. Right? So there's several different options of insulation available to you. This is just a fraction of them. It just really depends on your individual scenario. And it's probably best to work with a contractor on that who can explain your scenario individually. Now, this is some of the other things that you have to think about when you're doing your insulation upgrades. You have to think about things like caulking and weather stripping. Those are also things that you can install yourself, DIY. Spray foam, like I said, that can be DIY as well, but you want to make sure that it's fire retardant and not flammable. And it could be shrink wrap over some of your windows as well. That's another option that can help, especially if your home is particularly drafty, if you're feeling a lot of air coming into your windows and you're not necessarily ready to change your windows just yet. Shrink wrap is really just a clear sealing that goes over the window to keep that climate, to keep the window from transferring that air through its frame, right? So that's something that can help you with that as well. So like I said, there are different types of insulation materials for different parts of the home, and each one of them will function differently based on the scenario. Now, I want to speak to you about your attic as well. Your attic is particularly important, and why this is because remember, we said from the furnace, it's coming nice warm air. But you know that that warm air rises. So it means that it's going to sit just about roof level as you're seeing here on the right. And if your attic is not very well sealed, it means that that warm air is going to go directly out through the roofing frame. And you're going to lose a lot of energy that way. One way that you can tell this is happening with your home is in winter and the snow is not melting. If you see a lot of icicles coming under your eaves and whatnot, that's probably what's happening there. And that's just because your home is losing a lot of moisture through that warm air, and that warm air is freezing as it escapes through the attic, different parts of your home, different parts of the attic roofing as well. And that's not something that you want because again, that is nice warm air that you paid for, right? So you don't want that escaping, you want that to stay inside as long as possible. Now, another thing that you can do with your attic as well is to reduce thermal bridges. And what I mean by thermal bridges here is this image here on the right, where you see the wooden rafters going through the insulation. Those are thermal bridges. What's going to happen with that insulation, the way it is at the moment, you'll actually get a lot of energy going between the rafters and you'll be losing a lot of heat that way as well. The best thing to do in that particular case is to have more insulation over the rafters to ensure that this home can hold its heat much better. Another thing that you can consider as well, and this is the reverse for summer, very hot summers, and we're seeing in Ontario, especially Northern Ontario, we're getting hotter and hotter every summer, but you can consider a radiant barrier as well. Now, a radiant barrier just really looks like you're installing foil paper all over your attic, but what that helps to do is it helps to repel the sun's energy. Now, what happens in summer is the fact that the sun just beats onto your home, it's just shining onto your home, and your home is going to take on quite a bit of that temperature. And that temperature is going to come inside where you are, and your air conditioner has to remove it, or you're going to feel hot. Right? And that's not something you want. So a radiant barrier is something that can help you with this as well. Now, like I said, there are other options in insulation that you can see here. On the left, you have spray foam, blow-in cellulose, fiberglass, different types of insulation, but the main target for your attic area should be R value 50 to 60. That's the base case from NRCan. That's what they're suggesting for homes all across the board. And they're saying that once you're able to beef up your insulation, what you should be aiming for is R50 to R60. And if you're able to do that, well, then your home can be considered efficient. Right, and that's for the attic. The next part of the home here is the wall. And the walls do the same thing that we said that the envelope does before. So the walls really just keep the outside of your home outside, the outside climate outside, keeps the inside inside, right? It really helps to separate the two. And what you have here in terms of your wall, the type of insulation will really determine how well your warm performs in weather conditions. So there's several different options here, like I outlined, things like rigid board, things like blown-in cellulose, spray foam. There's several different options, and those options will be based on the construction of your home. You can see here on the right, you have some retrofit options, and that just means that the home has been constructed already, or it's an older home, and something needs to be done about the energy performance, and they're coming with a solution that works for that, right? So there are some new builds, and there are some retrofit solutions as well. This really depends on what you're looking for in terms of your energy performance. Now, based on that NRCan case, the target for walls, and that's above grade walls. That's why you see that little AG there. The walls above the mud, not your basement. Those walls should be between R20 and R30. That's the best R value that you can get for your home to be considered efficient. Now, this particular example here, bottom right, you can see through this home's wall. On the left, you have a door. But on the right, you can see that the home is losing a lot of energy, the red areas through the walls. All right, and this is something that you don't want because essentially, again, that will cost you quite a bit of energy, and that energy will cost you money as well. So that is not something that you want for your home. Now we go on to the below grade walls, the basement walls. And the below grade walls are essentially very similar to the above grade walls, but they operate a little bit differently. And the main difference here is the fact that they're sitting in quite a few meters of mud. That mud has moisture, and that moisture will get into your home. Now, apart from causing all sorts of issues with vermin, mold, that kind of thing, it will also rob you of your energy. And this is not something that you want as well. So for your below grade walls or for your basement walls, you have to ensure that those are very well insulated as well. Now for NRCan here, they have several different options that you can use for this. Things like basement blankets, rigid board, blowing cellulose, bat insulation, spray foam, other different types of insulation as well. One thing that you have to do with this type of work is you have to ensure that your basement floor is well insulated as well. Now, I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but sometimes you may go down into your basement and you're walking on the floor and you're just thinking to yourself, my gosh, this floor is terribly cold. Well, if that is happening to you, it's probably meaning that you're losing a lot of energy through that cold slab. And that's robbing you of your energy as well. And that is a very major problem for homes. They lose a lot of energy through the basement slab. And that's not something that you want for your home either. Right? So in this particular case, the target value for the walls is 12 to 34, R12 to 34. It's a pretty big gap there. But for the basement floor is between 10 and 15. And if you're able to get it up to 10 or 15, it will eliminate that problem where your basement floor is particularly cold. And the fact that it's cold means that you're losing energy through there. Right, so that's not something that you want, and it will help you with the comfort of your home as well. Now, the benefit of doing that type of work to your home really just helps you to reduce your energy consumption, as you will have seen. You can get an increase of 10% for your attic, 30% for your walls, and 35% for your basement. So that's quite a bit, actually. That's roughly about 70, 75% there that you're seeing improvement. And that's quite a large jump just from doing those 3 upgrades that I suggested. Now, on top of that, if you're ever thinking of selling your home, that helps with the value of your home as well. And of course, you know that the housing market in Ontario is actually quite popular at the moment. You know, there's homes that are listed and they sell within months, within weeks even, and depending on the location. So all of this really just helps you to reduce your energy consumption and helps with that greenhouse gas emission as well. And then on top of that, your home is more comfortable. The temperature is more stable because it's not as drafty, and that's because you're not losing that energy through your walls as well. And that's particularly important for a proper functioning home, for an energy efficient home. Now, an example of some rebates here. If you have, and I'm not sure how many persons are, but like I said, if you are an existing Embers customer, you may be able to tap into those rebates. Now, like I said, the very first audit is roughly about $400, and the second audit is roughly about $200 for any of this type of work if you're applying for incentives or rebates. And Enbridge gives up to $550 for those audits. Right? So once you're able to provide your receipts and what's not, provide proof that that's been done, provide the reports and all of that, well, then they will essentially send you a sum of $550, and you would have paid $600 for this. So this is essentially 2 audits for the price of $50, right? And that is, like I said, only if you're an Enbridge customer. There's also some other information in the chat box that Emily would have sent over. Thank you very much for that. So there should be some other information in that as well. And there are other incentives and rebates floating around out there as well. It just really depends on what you're interested in doing with your home. And like I said, trying to share with you the best upgrades that you can do with your home, best bang for buck. Now, some sources of information that I want to leave with you for this part or this section of our presentation. There's the Save on Energy Affordability Program, and that's Ontario-wide, so that's not just for Southern Ontario. There is the CMHC, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Pardon me. And then on top of that, you have the Greener Homes NRCan site as well. Right. So there are some sources of information. And then even further down in the presentation, I'll give you some more sources of information on that as well. Right. So I'll be sharing that with you throughout the entire presentation. So you have several opportunities to take notes. And then on top of that, I will send you some handouts on all of this as well, a summary of all of this. All right. Now let's see if we can go ahead. Do we have any questions that came in?
We do, Marcus. There was one question about is there a link to book the energy audit with NRCan?
It is on the website. So when you go to the website, you can talk about NR Guide evaluation. If you search the website for that, it'll take you direct to the link. And I think there's a search bar in the top right, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the top right. There's a search bar there. You go to that, and then you're able to pull that up. You can click on it directly, send them your information, and then go from there.
So it's my understanding, and maybe you can clarify, like you have to create a login in order to apply, or is that the first step? And then after you create a login, and I think you can log in through either your financial institution or if you have a Government of Canada ID, and then you would go and fill in the next steps to do that audit, correct?
Yeah, I think it's a GCID, yeah.
Okay.
Essentially the same site, yeah.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I can actually put that link directly into the chat for our individual who asked that question. And as I'm doing that, and that'll take you directly to the GC website to fill that in. So in the meantime, are there any other questions?
Right, yes, are there any other questions?
And just pop those into the chat or the Q&A.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And while we're waiting to see if there are any other questions, in many cases, there's a lot of information, or a lot of questions about whether this type of work with your home is will give you anything in terms of your tax and what's not. And in some cases, it really just depends on what it is you're doing. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Many of them are in development, so in another 3-4 years, a lot of them will give you different tax breaks and tax benefits and whatnot as well. Because again, this is something that the government wants persons to do, right? So they're going to try to make any way to make it easy for persons to get it done.
Absolutely, and I think we're just to build on that, because I'm not seeing any questions here. It's an interesting time. There are programs that are available right now. Some of them have been around for a while, like Marcus said, the utility and the IESO programs. But I wouldn't doubt that there will be more. The race to net zero is real. And the way that we get there is through help from these incentive and rebate programs. So here at the City of Sault Ste. Marie, we're doing our best to stay on top of those with our energy efficiency information website. So I encourage those who are watching today or watching at a later date to please keep your eyes on that website for sure. So I'm not seeing any more questions here, Marcus.
Okay, perfect. Well, then that will take us into the third section. And this section is mechanical optimization. And this is where you're looking at your air conditioning and your heating, the actual mechanical products that control the climate inside your home. And that's assuming that many persons have air conditioning and heating as well. And this is essentially the role of that. Now for this section, I'm going to start off with some jargon. But you will see on this slide, I also have different parts of the home that are the most energy consuming. So we'll go through that. That's the very first thing that we'll go through. And then we'll get into some potential optimizations for different pieces of equipment in the home. And then I'll go through some rebates and incentives about that. And that's essentially the format for this section. Now, coming back from that same NRCan test case, they did research on that home that they would have bought for that. And they had a number of findings. Now, if you look here on the right, you'll realize that space heating actually consumes roughly about 62% of the energy going into this home. Then on top of that, the bottom graph, the one in red, shows you where that is potentially being lost. So you can see that the main walls lose quite a bit, the basement foundation loses quite a bit, air leakage going right up to the windows loses quite a bit, and then the actual windows themselves, because they're glass, they lose quite a bit of energy as well. So of course, if you're able to target any of those, you will be able to reduce how much is being lost, and you will essentially reduce that 60% of energy going into this home as well. And this is most applicable to most houses across central and northern Ontario. So you can see here, windows and doors and sometimes skylights lose on average 35% of the energy in the home, and that's because they are leaking air and they're also leaking energy. And then Energy Star windows, Energy Star paint, selecting Energy Star products can help with that. And in many cases, Energy Star products are more than 40% more efficient than standard windows. Now, there is a bit of a trade-off with that. Energy Star products, in some cases, not in all cases, in some cases, they cost a bit more. But you can either buy a standard window and lose quite a bit of energy, or you can buy a better window and use less energy. So it's really whether you want to save the money up front or save it over time. It really is up to the homeowner. So that is something that I wanted to preface there, and that is something that has to balance out as well. Now, some jargon that you'll hear me refer to in this section. You'll hear me refer to, when I get to air conditioners, you'll hear me talk about the EER, the energy efficiency ratio. And that's really about how well the particular piece of equipment, usually the air conditioner, is cooling the entire room. You may hear me refer to as a ton as well, and a ton is just a measure of heat or a measure of cooling capacity. And it's equivalent to roughly about 350 birthday candles lit for about an hour. You'll also hear me refer to a British thermal unit as well. And a British thermal unit, again, is a measure of energy, and it usually measures how well a heating system is heating a particular room. And the British thermal unit is the equivalent of one birthday candle lit for 1 hour. So you can think of, you can put that into perspective and think of how much heat that will give you. You'll also hear me refer to as the AFU as well, the annual fuel utilization value, or the annual fuel utilization efficiency. And what that really is how well your furnace or whatever piece of equipment you're using to heat your home, how well it's doing its job. And if that furnace is using any type of fuel, how well is it combusting that fuel? There's some that are better than others, and there's some that do a better job of that simply because of the way that they're constructed and designed as well. So that's one thing that you need to take into account. Higher AFUE is better than a low AFUE. Sorry about that. All right, so moving smartly along, in that same NRCan test case, they did quite a few things. They made quite a few upgrades. In this particular case here, you can see that they did some upgrades on space heating, and they got the space heating down from 101 gigajoules per year down to 23 gigajoules per year. So that is absolutely a huge, amazing savings. And then for water heating, they got it down from 25 to 5 as well. Now for water heating, one thing that you can consider is instead of having a water heater with a tank, you can have an on-demand water heater, what's called an instantaneous water heater. And that's just as you use the water, that water is heated. Usually it works off of gas or propane. This depends on which one you get. And it heats the water as you use it. So instead of just having a big pool of warm water in your basement in a tank, So you can essentially heat that water on demand. It's much more efficient as well, simply because if you have a large tank of hot water sitting in your basement, well, you have to do exactly that. You have to keep it hot. So it means that you're going to be using energy to keep that hot continuously, right? So that is a huge waste as well. And that is essentially where you can get some of these savings there as well. For space heating, it really depends on a number of things. It depends on the equipment that you're using to heat the space, the fuel that you're using to heat the space. And then on top of that, the actual space itself. Is the air going out? Is the warm air going out? Is it going through the attic? Is it going through the windows? Where's the air going after that? And that's particularly important as well. So there are a number of things that are important to us that we'll look at here, and we'll look at these as we go through this section. Now, the first thing that we want to look at here is furnaces. And you saw that the average home in Ontario was built in 1981. And let's say if the mechanicals have been fitted from then, if they haven't been replaced since then, any furnace over 9 years old is roughly about 60% fuel utilization efficiency. And that just really means that 60% of the fuel that that furnace is consuming is only combusted. The rest of it is wasted in some way. And that is particularly wasteful. And that's not something that you want for your home as well. The target fuel utilization value for furnaces, and especially for Energy Star furnaces or for any efficient furnace, is more than 95%. And that will just mean in that particular case, almost all of the fuel, almost 100% of the fuel that this furnace consumes will be combusted. And why that's important is because that will be combusted and that will be forming the heat for your home, right? So you want to make sure that you burn as much of that as possible and you burn it as well as possible so that that heat can be delivered directly to where it's going to be used. And that is where your home is. You don't want to lose that heat before it's delivered into your home. That's particularly important for that. Now, one thing that can help you here with this, to understand the size of furnace and the type of furnace that you should use for your home, comes back to the NR Guide evaluation. And in that evaluation, the advisor, you can ask the advisor for a sizing calculation, the right sizing calculation. It's a little bit long-winded, but the person will know what you're speaking of. It's called the CSA F28012 calculation. All it really means is the right sizing of systems for your home. And you should ask your advisor for that if you're having an NR Guide audit done. What's the best furnace to suit my particular home? What's the best type of fuel for me to use, things like that. And they will do a calculation based on the size of your home, how many people live there, what fuels are available and what's not, and they will tell you the best things that you should use in this particular scenario. And what that will help you to go out and buy a furnace that really can do what it is it's supposed to do in terms of your home. If you buy a furnace too large, it's going to consume more energy. And if you buy a furnace that's too small, well, then different parts of your home are going to be cold, right? So you want to ensure that it's sized directly to your particular home and its size and its use as well. Now, another thing with Energy Star furnaces, and here on the top right, you'll see there's a little tag that you'll see in the marketplace on some of these furnaces, and it says Energy Star 2021 most efficient. Those are the newest furnaces on the market. And those furnaces have a number of different features. Now, the first thing that they have is they have 2 heat exchangers instead of 1. So where the fuel is actually combusted, and this is for fuels like propane or methane or natural gas or any of those, not talking about wood or heavy oil or any of those, but where the fuel is combusted, instead of combusting that fuel once, it actually combusts it twice. And it takes the heat out of that double combustion twice. So you get more heat, you get a better burn on that fuel in that particular case. Another thing that some of the more modern furnaces have is they have an exhaust fan, which helps to take those waste gases out after the combustion process has been finished, because that is air that you can't do anything with, right? So if it takes that air out, it makes the furnace a little bit more efficient as well. Now, one thing that this sealed chamber for combustion really helps with, and this is where the, if you look at some of the older furnaces, you look underneath, you'll actually see a flame under there. That flame is the pilot. Well, in that particular case, that is consuming fuel, and little bits and parts per million, little particles of that fuel being combusted are really just floating through the air, and now it's getting into your system as well. And that's not something that you want to ingest or breathe in. So for the newer furnaces, what they do is they have a sealed combustion chamber, and that helps to deliver more heat. And then on top of that, it's better for the air that you're breathing inside your home as well. Some of them have flame modulation, which is where you can turn the flame up and down depending on how much heat you need as well. And that is another thing that helps with your efficiency, simply because if this is generally a mild day, let's say maybe -5, -10 or something like that, you may be able to get away with maybe half of the fuel use. But if it's a particularly cold day, -30, -35 or something like that, you want to make sure that that modulation is open so that that furnace can get as much fuel as it possibly needs, right? And that is one thing that can help you with your efficiency as well. So these furnaces, the more efficient furnaces, 2021 most efficient, have a number of features that can help you with that. And on average, they can help to increase the efficiency up to 15%. So quite a bit of a big jump there in terms of the efficiency, but it will help you in the long run in terms of the savings that you're getting, in terms of energy and in terms of costs as well. In some other cases, with things like wood burning stoves and what's not, there may be different parts of that that you can insulate with different types of insulation to help keep that heat in and make sure that that heat is delivered to the home where it's going to be used as well. You don't want to lose that heat before it even gets to where it's going to be used, right? You want to keep that heat in as much as possible. So some of these newer furnaces here also have better filters, better filtration, and they have better air circulation as well. So it really just is about better ease of access and better usability as well with these newer furnaces. Now for the air conditioning units, you'll also see this tag on the top right on some of the newer air conditioning units, Energy Star, most efficient 2021. And what happens with the air conditioning units is that air conditioning units carry a refrigerant, and a refrigerant is what really allows them to cool. Now, what happens with the refrigerant is that that refrigerant absorbs the heat that's in your home, and it takes that heat and puts it outside, right? Now, there are a number of different refrigerants that you can use to do that, and some refrigerants are better than others. Now, if you remember in the early, I think it was early to mid 2000s, there were some refrigerants that were banned. And that was because they were just terrible for the environment. They were depleting the ozone layer. They were causing problems with different animals, birds especially, and they were doing a number of harmful things to the environment. One thing that happens with the newer furnaces is that they use better refrigerants, more eco-friendly refrigerants, and then on top of that, more efficient refrigerants as well. So the difference there is between refrigerant 410 and R32, a bit of an upgrade, which helps the piece of equipment to work better. Now, another thing that happens with the newer furnaces as well, and that was referring to the global warming potential, is that they have a better heat per watt rating. It means that a smaller amount of refrigerant can hold more heat and transfer that heat more. So that really means that you'll have to do less work in your air conditioning unit to remove the heat from your home. And then that will mean that you use less energy in doing that. These newer units also have a longer warranty. They use better refrigerants, as I said, with a lower global warming potential. And then on top of that, they have a high efficiency compressor as well, which is built to last a bit longer. Now, in terms of NRCan, what they're suggesting for your air conditioner, remember air is energy efficiency ratio or rating. They're suggesting more than 20, and you'll see this written on the tag on your air conditioning unit when you go to the store to actually buy it. You'll see an Energy Star tag. It'll sometimes come in yellow, sometimes it will be white, and it will really compare that particular air conditioner that you're looking at to other air conditioners on the market as well. And in this particular case, it's saying that if you get one that has an air of above 20, well, then your home can be considered energy efficient. Usually in that case, the efficiency rating increases by 30% or more, and that will help you with savings all across the board on your home, especially in the cooling season, summer season as well. As you know, our summers are getting a bit hotter. Now, this is the part where we get into a bit of alternative heating sources. And one such alternative is a heat pump. Now, a heat pump is very similar to an air conditioning unit, but it's able to work in reverse. So what this does now is it does heating in winter and it does cooling in summer as well. And in many cases, they're designed specifically for use in Canada. So they're designed with the climate here in mind, especially in Northern Ontario. The different zones, Southern Ontario, Eastern, Western, the different parts that are different products are designed for. Now, on top of that, another thing that a heat pump can do is that it can take heat from various alternative sources. So there's some heat pumps that can just take the air around it and they can draw the heat out of that air and take that heat and put it into your home. That's essentially free heat that you're getting. Another thing with that as well is that sometimes you can take the heat from the mud around your home or the mud that your home is sitting in. You can take that heat from that mud and put into your home as well, because the mud stays at roughly about 12 degrees all year round. So if outside is, let's say, maybe minus 30 or so, and the mud is roughly about 12 degrees, well, that's quite a bit of energy that you can take and harvest and put inside your home. And that is also free energy as well. Especially for hot days, when your home is particularly warm, you can take that heat from inside your home and you can put it in a water source as well. And that's especially possible if you live near to a river or a lake or something of the sort, which is another free way to harvest heat and harvest the environment around you as well. Right? So there's several different options there in terms of heat pumps that can help you in terms of your energy cost and savings. Now, these are particularly useful for cottages or persons that live in remote areas. And these use up to 45% less energy. Right? So it really just depends on what is installed, how it's designed, how it's installed, and that may be something that is possible for you. And these images that you can see here, bottom right, usually what happens with alternative heating is that they will run some hosing, they'll run some piping all around your home under the lawn. So of course you have to dig up the lawn, then you have to replace it and it's gonna grow back. The lawn is going to be the same way that it was, but that's the way that the heat is harvested in that particular case, right? So that is something that is particularly useful. You just install it once, and then once you install it, then it's fully operational for the rest of the time that you have that particular property. So that is something that you can consider as well. Now that brings me into a little bit of a question here that I have. And I want to know, based on everything that I just said about heat pumps, is that something that you would actually consider installing into your home? And I want to see the persons that are for yes. Yes, I'd absolutely install that, okay? I would absolutely do that right away if I had the opportunity. And then I want to see, we have about 3 or 4 persons saying yes, okay. Then I want to see the persons that absolutely would not do that. I would never do that to my home. I absolutely would not. How many persons would never, okay? We have some responses there. And then, how many persons think that they would need more information about that? More information. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not sure. Maybe, depends. Okay, so we have some. Okay, we have some responses there. Perfect. Thanks for those responses as well. Right. Like I said, I will give you some information that may help you with that. So the persons that said more information needed, definitely look out for that one. All right. Now, just as we get into the final parts of the section here, one thing that I want to tell you is that you can buy the most efficient furnace on the market and the most efficient air conditioning unit on the market, but it is not going to be energy efficient and it's not going to save you anything if it's not controlled well. And by controlled well, I mean you can have the most efficient furnace if it's on all day long because your home is losing heat, or if it's on all day long because you don't have it set properly, well, then it's essentially going to consume the same as a normal furnace, and that's not something that you want. And one thing that can help you with that is your thermostat. Your thermostat really just controls how the piece of equipment works, and your thermostat controls a number of different systems within that. Power is nothing without control. Now what you have here, what you're looking at is a Wi-Fi integrated thermostat. And this is the Wi-Fi that you're using now. If you're able to use that Wi-Fi and integrate the thermostat with that, and they have several of those products on the market, it will help you in terms of the control that you have. Now, there's two main products on the market here in Ontario. There's one that has been made by Google. I think it's called Nest. There is that. And then there's one that's been made by a Canadian company called Ecobee, and they make furnaces specifically for Canada. Not furnaces, sorry, thermostats specifically for Canada. And in doing that, like I said, it's Wi-Fi integrated. So even if you're driving down the streets, or even if you're driving somewhere far away from home and you said, oh, I forgot to turn the heat off, well, then you can go to your phone and you can actually use that to turn your heat down or turn your heat off until you get back home. And that's one thing that can help you with your efficiency as well. The only thing that you need to be mindful about with that is that you want to ensure that you're not gone for any prolonged period of time, because you don't want anything freezing in your home. You don't want any pipes bursting or anything of the sort. That would not be a nice situation to be in. Right? But you can control your heating and cooling based on where you are, based on a Wi-Fi connection. And this is what these smart thermostats offer. Now, even if you wanted to do this yourself, replace your thermostat yourself, and this is something that you can do. You can take an entire Saturday and do it. When you take your standard thermostat off the wall, you'll see a number of wires there. And each wire will be coded because it controls something. So an example here, yellow would control cooling, white will control your heating, and red would be your power. And you'll see some other wires there as well, but essentially they will control different parts of the entire system. And the unit that you're buying, the smart thermostat you're buying, will tell you what to connect where as well. So this is essentially very easy. And then on top of that, when I get to the rebates for this section, there are a number of different institutions that have rebates for smart thermostats as well. So they give away money for persons installing those. And once you can provide your receipt that you would have bought and installed it, that is something that you will be eligible for as well. So that is particularly important, and that's something that you can tap into as well. Now, I think Emily mentioned a bit about this in the energy plan, the community energy plan, but solar panels is another option that you can use as well. So in this particular case here, looking at this diagram here that's a little bit moving on the right, or schematic, whatever you want to call it, you can see that during the day, our solar panels are generating electricity and they charge a battery. And then at night, we use that battery to run our lights, to run all of our systems in our home. And this house is completely off grid in this particular case. The only way that it's wired into the grid is for backup. If for whatever reason the sun doesn't shine for one day, or you use more than you plan to, or something like that, well, then you can use electricity. And this will help you to lower your electricity use over time as well. Now, the good thing about this is, of course, you have to pay for the upfront installation of the solar panels onto your home. You may have to do some roof work in some cases, but after this project pays for itself, it's all profit. You're getting free electricity and you don't have to pay for that. And as you can tell, in Ontario, electricity rates have been going up, right? So that is something, if you can opt out of, that was something that will be beneficial for you as well. So this is particularly important. This is something that can be helpful to you. Now, I had a client recently that said that his system paid for itself in roughly about 6 years. And the payback on these is usually anywhere about 5 to 8 years, roughly. So it means if you spend $10,000 in roughly 5 to 10 or 5 to 8 years or so, you will generate that $10,000 in electricity. And then after that, it is all profit. Now, Ontario had the Retrofit program, and this was the program where homeowners were able to provide the grid with electricity for a cost. They were paid for the electricity that they provided. However, that program has been taken offline, and I'm not sure what's happening with it at the moment. I think they were trying to upgrade it and do some different updates with it. We may see that back in the future, not sure as yet. Regardless, though, of that program, this provides your home with free electricity. So this can be something that can be helpful to you as well. So we have a bit of a question here. Would you consider putting solar panels on your roof? And let's see the persons that will absolutely consider that. would consider that? Okay, so we have 2 participants here, 3. Okay, we have some responses coming in. Yeah, okay. Who would not consider that? Who would not? I would absolutely never do this to my house. No, no way, no way. Who would not? Okay. And then I want to see by show of hands the persons that would do it, but if the government paid for some portion of it. Okay, we have some responses there. Okay. Doesn't necessarily have to be government, could be some other institution, entity, charity, whatever have you. Okay, so thanks for those responses there. And like I said, I'll provide you with some information that may be able to help you with those decisions as well. So the benefits of optimizing your mechanicals, and when I say your mechanicals, I mean your furnace, I mean your air conditioner, your ventilation system, all of that. The benefits of that really is to give your home a better fuel burn, better consumption in terms of whatever fuel you use, and also better return on investment as well. So you spend some money, and of course, that will give you a return on that investment. Now, for alternative heating, ground source heat pumps, air source heat pumps, and whatnot, furnace improvements, for ground source heat pumps, you can get roughly about 60% improvement. That means 60% or more. For air source heat pumps, you can get 30% or more roughly. And for normal furnace, conventional furnace, improvements there will give you 20% or more, right? And of course, this comes with better circulation and ventilation of air all around your home, which will mean that you're more comfortable and feel better in your home as well. More comfortable, better resale value, several different benefits there with that. Now, some incentive and retrofit programs, and this is one of the few sections that has both. You have the federal program, Ontario-wide, Greener Homes. You have some climate funds and not-for-profits as well out there. I think Greenpeace was doing something with this at one point, I'm not sure. I have to look that up. And then you may have something at your local city level coming as well. Garden River and Sault Ste. Marie may have something in the works there coming. I'm sure that Emily can talk about at some point. And then other sources of information would include the Greener Homes website as well, Federal Greener Homes website. Again, if you're able to find some information there, this information can guide you. Now, in terms of rebates, like I said, if you are an existing Embers customer, there are some rebates out there, and they have the smart thermostat rebate. So even if your thermostat was something that you wanted to replace on your own, you can get up to $75 for that replacement as well. And then different sums of money for heating system improvements, water heater upgrades, and then of course you get the rebate for the audits as well. And like I said, with those rebates, you just have to provide proof that whatever was done, and then you have to show your receipts as well. And once you send in that information, that will be something that they will take care of on their end and send to you. So for this section, our second last section, are there any questions that came in?
So for those who have any, if you have them, please put them into the chat function. Not seeing any here right at this point, but just to build up very quickly, because I think we've got about 20 minutes left. So just to add to what Marcus was saying, the solar projects right now, specifically, I would recommend looking at the Canada Greener Homes Grant. That is one of the projects that would be eligible through that one, of course, depending on what the EnerGuide audit determines. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would recommend checking out that program. And then for the other rebates and incentives, I know that there's a lot of information coming at you. So please, again, refer to the city's website where we have all of the links, etc., right at your fingertips. So in the essence of time, Marcus, I think I'll ask for you to just move right along to your next section.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And this brings us to our final section. The final section here is all about managing your renovation smartly. So in your renovation that you're doing, how to make that as smooth as possible, because as you know, sometimes working with contractors, can be a bit of an interesting process, let's say that, and that's just because there's so many things to manage at any given time. So as a stat for you, and that stat is planned renos, and this is any renovation that you're doing to your home in terms of energy efficiency, usually increase the success rate by more than 80% or roughly 80%. Right? So it means that you increase the odds of meeting the goals and the targets that you're trying to hit. Now in this section, I'll just go through some steps for managing renos, and I'll go through some information sources as well. Some of them may be different parts of Ontario, but regardless of that, it just really is a source of information that you can get regardless of where it is coming from, right? So I just wanted to share that with you and share those information sources with you. Now, before I go into that though, I have a quick question. Would you personally feel planning a renovation on your home, or would you begin without planning? So let's see the persons that would rather plan it first. Who would rather plan the renovation first? Okay. We have some responses there. Who would rather plan their, okay, quite a few responses. Wow, okay. I think that's probably the most responses that we've had. And then who are the persons that would not plan? They'd rather not plan their renovation. They'd rather not plan it. They just want to get it done. However it's done, they just go ahead and do it. And then who are the persons that just haven't really decided? I'm not sure yet. Okay, so it seems like the majority of persons are for planning. Well, we are in luck today because the number of things that you have to do when you're planning. So the first thing is to set your goals, and your goals will really be ideas that you have. I want to save 25% energy. I want to save 25% energy on my gas bill. I want to save roughly whatever number have you. And then after that, you go about doing some research. Now, when you go over to the NRCan website and you order your home evaluation, an advisor will come to you and will do that evaluation. And that evaluation will give you some information. That information will be along the lines of the best parts of your home to target, where your energy is going, and how you can reduce that energy consumption. Now, after you have that audit done, it's time to start approaching contractors. And this is where you're looking for the best contractors. And usually, the best contractors have a little bit of a waiting list in many cases. Some of them may be ready to go, but usually they have a bit of a waiting list. So you may have to wait a month, 2 months, depending on what it is they're doing. And then coming out of the NRCan evaluation, they would have some suggestions on what should be done with your home, and then you work with the contractor to get that done to your home. When you finish that, you get a second audit, and you submit all of your audit information, and that will give you eligibility for rebates and different grants that may be floating around as well. And like I said, you're going to see a lot more of them coming on stream in the next coming years as well. And that's essentially the entire process for planning a renovation. Now, I wanted to give you some information. Like I said, that's one of my goals that I wanted to hit today. But I want to give you some information that will help you at each stage. Now, an example here is step one, where you're looking at your goals, where you're thinking about your goals. You can see what some other homeowners have done, and you can see what is eligible for your home as well, based on several different things. And the Canadian Home Builders Association has a number of different tools there to help you. And one of the tools that they have is a contractor list as well. So even when you're thinking about this type of work, you can reach out to the contractors to see what is possible, what's not possible, waiting times, costs, things like that. You can get more information that can help you to plan. Now, in terms of doing any research, of course, the NRCan has loads of information on their website. So there is that as well. And of course, they have product information. That product information, there's some products that are eligible for rebates and other coupons and what's not. And there's some others that aren't. And they will suggest on that website which is the best product to use for your given area, for your given zone in Canada as well. Right? So there's a lot of information there that will guide you on what's best to use for your particular scenario. Then once you do that, you get your EnerGuide evaluation from NRCan. And like I said, you sign in with that DC partner and you go from there. And you pay for those audits And those audits, like I said, will be rebated a bit later. We'll talk about that in the next slide as well. You also have some information about that, the Enbridge program, and that is only if you're an Enbridge customer. If you're some other utilities customer or any other provider's customer, that may be something that you can look for as well, your local utilities that will help you with that information as well. Now, step 4 is to actually go and hire your contractors, and many cities have a list of contractors that they approve. I'm not sure if you have one of those in this particular scenario, but there are also some other sources of information that you can find as well. Things like the Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Institute of Canada, they have various tips to look out for homeowners. And then they have the Building Industry Land Development Association renovation guide as well. So there are some resources out there that can help you with this, that can help you with things to look for, and can help you to hire the best contractors that will suit you as well. And then the final thing to do after that is to track your profit. Look at your savings, analyze your savings, work with your MF Guide advisor, and then go from there. Apply for your rebates, apply for your benefits grants, anything of that nature, your tax rebates, all of those are things that are possible as well. This really depends on your given scenario. That is essentially the most important information that you'll need in terms of planning your entire renovation. Now that brings me to the end of everything that I wanted to share with you today. But I just want to leave you with one sentence, and that sentence is an acronym that I call BASIS, or looking at the basis, rather. That's the sentence, and the acronym is BASIS. And BASIS just really stands for basement, attic, core, your envelope, and your systems. So basement, attic, the entire core of your home, the envelope that's keeping the climate maintained, and then the systems that do that, the air conditioning, the heating system, all of those. And if you're able to target those bases, well, then you can get the most efficient home that you can possibly have. All right, just wanted to share that. So my goal today, like I said, I had a 3-part goal. I just wanted to empower and motivate homeowners in doing that. I want to educate homeowners about what might be available to them in terms of resources. And then on top of that, I want to introduce you to various sources of information where you can get information on financing and rebates and incentives and grants and other things that may be happening as well. And like Emily said, this is an exciting time. There's quite a bit happening as well. So I just wanted to preface that. Now, are there any final questions? Are there any closing questions that you may have? I don't think any came in, but if there are any, definitely take those now.
Yes, so this is your chance. I know there's a lot of information that was shared with us this evening. Fantastic information, especially if you're new to this field and thinking about retrofitting or renovating your home. A reno should always be thought about in conjunction with the energy in your house as well. 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will. So what I'll do is maybe just wrap some things up here on our end and let folks, if you have any questions, please pump them into the chat. Marcus, did you have any other closing remarks that you wanted to share?
I just want to thank you for having me. That is it. Excellent.
Wonderful. So I'll ask that you maybe stop sharing your screen just so that we can see the whole crew again.
Sure.
So I'll just begin by saying thank you so much for your very thorough but down-to-earth way of explaining the complexities of the home energy system. This was the second webinar in Sault Ste. Marie and Garden River First Nations 4-part energy literacy webinar series. And our first webinar took a look at how does Ontario's energy system work? And this webinar was so perfect to follow it by taking a look at your home energy system and really doing a deep dive in how does energy work in your home. And I really have to say you did an excellent job at this, Marcus. So thank you so very much. I'm sure I see nods from both Christy and Tia, and I think they can agree. Again, on behalf of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, thank you. This information for the webinar, for those still in attendance, will be posted onto the city's website, the recording of the webinar, but also for those attendees who were able to show up today, but I know some couldn't due to other commitments or conflicts. We will be sending out an email with some handouts that I assume Marcus will have links to some of those sites that you had, correct?
Absolutely will. Yes.
Wonderful. So there will be a series of links in there that you can access. Again, I know a lot of information has been covered here, but in addition to that, and I'm just going to put this into the chat function here right now, we do have a short survey that we'd like all of the attendees to please fill out. This will give some information that both Humber College and Enbridge can look at to see if it met your expectations or if there's any improvements that can be made. So I just want to thank again everyone so much. So before I do the final wrap up, Christy, is there anything, Tia, that you would like to add?
I just wanted to say that if there's anyone on here that is from Garden River First Nation, you can contact me at ksayers@gardenriver.org if you have any questions regarding any of the rebates or programs that we do offer. Or if you're even just looking for a copy of the Indigenous Energy Plan, then we can send that off as well too. I have hard copies and the digital copy as well.
Thank you, Christy. I've put your email into the chat there. So for those who are in attendance, you can email her directly, as well as anyone who is interested here in the community of Sault Ste. Marie. If you have any questions about some of the work that we're working on, please feel free to reach out to us. Tia, anything you'd like to add?
Hi, thanks, Emily. I just want to say thank you for having me, and thank you to Marcus. That was a wonderful presentation and a lot of good information.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone so much for your attendance. Please keep your eyes peeled for an email. And again, Marcus, I know this is what you do, but it's just so important. Energy literacy is a big part of our fight against climate change. And this is a wonderful way to do it. You do it so well. It can be a little daunting and complex for those who may not be engineers. And I thank you for that so very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to stop my recording here. So 1 second. And if I don't see you, I wish you all a wonderful evening.